Alright guys, so in regards to that last post I posted on my Instagram, I wanted to explain and bring a point home that I feel that God was sharing with me to share with you guys. So, as I said, my nephew Derek and my girl Jay, they got left behind on our flight back to Texas from Orlando Airport. So, what had happened was my girl Jay failed to check in on time. And my nephew, Derek, well, he did check in, but at the point that he hit the check-in button, it just kind of went blank. Nothing happened. So he couldn't go any further, thus him not being able to check in as well, thus them missing the flight because the airlines had already gave their seats up. So what I want to share is, although my girl Jay forgot to check in, Derek didn't. But God allowed that app to crash just at that time because he was working something. He was working something together. Because just imagine if my girl Jay had been the only one that missed the flight and she was left behind, the anxiety for her would have been out the roof. So we feel that God allowed Derek's app to crash at just the right time so that he would be left behind with my girl Jay. And so they were able to come together and be each other's support because Derek, not too familiar with airplane, air flight protocol and all. As a matter of fact, he thought that the flight that we were getting on was going to be the only flight for that day, and he was going to have to get a rental car and drive back to the state of Texas. Yeah. So we had Derek, he's real calm and he doesn't, let things just get to him. But you could tell he was a bit overwhelmed because, the support system of, the rest of us, my hubby, me, his mom, and all, we were gone. We were on the flight. So he was left there with Jennifer, and Jennifer didn't know nothing, as far as what needed to be done. Plus, she was all out of sorts anyway. So even in the midst of that chaos of them missing the flight and all, God was working, allowing them to be each other's support. So that was one part of the chaos. The second part of the chaos was my granddaughter, who's 13, got held up by the bag protocol. She had the wrong bags that you're supposed to board the plane with. I guess they were both the same size and one has to be smaller than the other. So while she was being tended to, my daughter stepped in and took the bag so that Amaya could go ahead and get on the plane. Well, my daughter being left behind, thank God, not left behind like she didn't make the flight, but left behind to see what was going on with this situation with my girl Jay and Derek. Because had she not stayed back, to see what was happening, we was on the plane already, so we wouldn't have had a clue as to why they didn't board the plane. And so she was able to be left back there to, pick up where they was trying to hold Amaya. I don't know why. Amaya's 13 years old. But yeah, even though her mom was there, but again, she was, able to let us know what was going on with Derek and Jennifer, like I said, because otherwise we wouldn't have known. So she said that they're pretty rude to Derek and Jennifer. And if you know Derek and Jennifer, which you probably don't, some of you may, I don't know, but they're pretty, like the easiest persons that you can get along with. If you looked up kindness in the dictionary, you probably see both their pictures. So my daughter didn't like that how they was being treated, so she tried to stay behind to kind of, be the go-between to kind of help, but then they told her to move right along too. So by the time she boarded the plane, she was able to tell us what was going on because we didn't have a clue. So the lady that was minding who gets on the plane or not had come up on the plane and told us that Jennifer never checked in. She didn't say Derek did it because I believe Derek did check in because he said he hit the button and then things just froze. But again, I felt that was God's way of keeping him behind to stay with Jennifer so it could calm and ease her mind and be a comfort to her. Now, my daughter, in her sweetness, said, I would have stayed behind because I knew y'all would have kept an eye on my girls. So I thought, really? You would have stayed behind? That is so sweet. She said, yeah, because I saw the fear in Jennifer's eyes. And so she had compassion for her. But this is how God works. God didn't allow us to make that choice as to who would have stayed behind. He already made the choice for us by allowing Derek's app to crash. Therefore, he was the designated person to stay behind with my girl Jay. So let's get on to the plane where we have a little bit of more chaos. My niece Kaylani has a fear of flying. So when we boarded the flight to go to Orlando, she held her brother Derek's hand at least 30 minutes into the flight. Yeah, she was really nervous. And so, as it so happened, because Derek wasn't with her this time, she got put with someone that she didn't know. And so, yes, she was freaking out. Her mother noticed the freaking out and she said, let's switch seats and I'll sit with where you was going to sit. And so that's what happened. But the thing of it was that Kaylani got seated with Adeline, which is my youngest granddaughter. And so in the midst of the fear that Kaylani thought she had, God removed that fear and allowed her to be a comfort to Adeline. He allowed her to know that, hey, I know you was dependent on Derek to be your security, but I want you to know I'm your security. I will be the one that will be with you. You depend on me. You trust in me, not in Derek, because I left him behind so you could see that there's really no need for fear when I'm here. So again, in the midst of chaos, God was yet there working in the midst. So I just thought this was so awesome, and of course I had to share it. And one more thing I want to leave with you. So my luggage got left behind. I did mention it in the previous post, but I just wanted to bring home again the point that the driver that was assigned to my luggage to get it to me was a man named Emmanuel. I want to show you how the name even came across in dark black bold letters, Emmanuel. I immediately was thinking, you know what? That is biblically meaning God with us. So the point I want to drive home and let you guys be aware of that even in the midst of chaos, God is still with us. God is still working things out for our good. So my girl sent me this text the next day, and she said, I know one thing I learned this weekend is that God is so good. And of course, I responded with, well, you already knew that. You just needed, we all just needed a reminder of his goodness. Through good and not so good situations, God is still good, and God is yet working in the midst of the chaos. Be blessed.